Short story. Convict. A convicted murderer was released from prison after serving years behind bars. He found work through a temporary labor agency and was assigned to a construction site. To his co-workers, he seemed quiet and kept to himself. But his violent past, murders, hunts, pursuit, was unknown to many on the job. One morning, an argument broke out with a forklift operator over a routine work task. The confrontation escalated, fight, and the former inmate followed the driver around, muttering everybody around him. Police quickly searched to arrest the suspect, whose case shocked co-workers and the victim's family. The case of attacks, murders, renewed debate about background checks, workplace safety, and how employers balance giving former offenders a second chance with protecting employees. Convicted murderer is obsessed with a local delivery driver. The delivery driver, however, is the forklift driver on a different job. Every day, he secretly follows the driver's route. Hours after each package is delivered, the recipient turns up murdered. To investigators, the only apparent connection is that every dead victim received a delivery that day, placing the unsuspecting driver under growing suspicion. As the body count rises, the driver notices strange patterns on the route and begins investigating, unaware that the murderer is using the deliveries as a ready-made list of isolated targets. It becomes a race to identify the next address before the killer arrives. While clearing the driver's name, he arrived at the asylum carrying only a suitcase and a confession. "I killed someone," he told, confessed the receptionist. She looked up from her paperwork. "Who? I don't know." There was a long silence. "I just know I did." The doctors admitted him after he insisted he was a danger to the world. He described nightmares of blood under his fingernails, a face he couldn't remember, a scream that woke him every night. Murders. Yet every question ended the same way. No name, no body, no place, no evidence. Weeks became months. Police investigated anyway, unable to ignore such certainty. They searched, found nothing. Missing persons reports matched no one. Forests were searched, rivers dragged. Every lead dissolved into ordinary life. The staff began to suspect delusions, born from overwhelming guilt that had attached itself to an imaginary crime. They diagnosed obsessive psychosis and treated him gently, but he never changed his story. Wall punch. "I know I murdered someone." "How?" "I can't remember." "Then why are you certain?" "Because someone has to be missing." Years later, an elderly psychiatrist preparing his discharge asked one final question. "If there was no murder," she said, "what do you think you've been grieving all this time?" The man stared through the window at the autumn leaves. "Myself." She frowned. He looked down at his trembling hands. "I came here because I thought I'd killed a person. A lot of people. It's just safer this way." 3 days after his release from the asylum, the man disappeared from every record again. No address, no job history, no relatives, just a suitcase left behind and one sentence written on a piece of paper. "If I remember, people die." Years later, a temporary labor agency sent him to work at a large construction site outside the city. He kept his head down, drove the forklift, and avoided conversations. The other workers knew him only as a quiet man who never joined lunch breaks and never talked about his past. They didn't know he had once walked into an asylum convinced he was a murderer. They didn't know he still woke up every night hearing screams. The only person who seemed interested in him was another man at the site, a delivery driver who also worked occasional warehouse shifts. The driver noticed the former inmate watching him. At first, he thought it was paranoia. Then the packages started. Every day, the delivery driver followed the same route. Every day, hours after he dropped off a package, The person who received it was found dead. Police noticed the pattern quickly. Every victim had one thing in common: a delivery from the same driver. The driver became the main suspect, but the forklift operator knew something was wrong. He recognized the killings, not because he committed them, because they felt familiar. The same feeling from his nightmares, the same invisible presence following him. When he searched through old newspaper archives, he found something impossible. The murders matched crimes from years earlier, cases that had never been solved, and in every photograph from every crime scene, there was the same man standing in the background, a security guard. The forklift driver's blood went cold. The guard worked at the county jail, the same jail where the former inmate had spent years. The next morning, the forklift operator went looking for him. He found him waiting. "You finally remembered," the guard said. The operator froze. "Remembered what?" The guard smiled. "That you weren't the killer." The truth came out slowly. The guard had been obsessed with him for years. He studied his movements, learned his routines, and used his work routes to find victims. But he needed someone else to blame. Someone with a past. Someone nobody would believe. The former inmate. "You thought you were a monster," the guard whispered. "I just gave you a reason." The forklift operator reached for his phone, but the guard stepped closer. "You walked into that asylum because your mind knew the truth. You saw what I did. You just couldn't remember my face." The former inmate stared at him. The nightmares, the blood, the screams, they were never memories of his own crimes. They were memories of trying to stop someone else. Police arrived minutes later, after the driver had secretly sent them the location. The jail guard was arrested, and the delivery driver was cleared. Years of guilt finally had an answer, but the former inmate never celebrated. When reporters asked him how he felt, he looked toward the prison in the distance. "I spent my life afraid I was a monster," he said. "Turns out I was just the only person who knew one." That night, for the first time in years, he slept without hearing a scream. But somewhere in the city, another prisoner stared through a jail cell window and whispered, "That wasn't the only one."